now. I think we are. No, we're not yet. Okay, I think we are on live now. Dobro večer svima. Kao vratili smo se, mislim, nešto se desilo sa internetom. Čekat ćemo Darena da se uključi. Evo ga. Samo moment da provjerim. Samo sekund. Trebali smo, tu smo. So we're here. As I was saying, we met a couple of years ago. Darren served in the U.S. Army. He was a diplomat and an officer. And his last post, defense attaché at the U.S. Embassy in Montenegro. He fell in love with our country and decided to stay here. And he's been living here for 5 years already with his family. A person that I admire very much, not just because of his perfect career, but about his dedication to his family and to the community, and dedication to the lifetime service after he left his service. He served in Europe, in Middle East, in Central Asia, in Afghanistan, and his leadership journey is quite an exceptional one. And I wanted to use this opportunity tonight to have people from Montenegro familiar with a person that lives here with us. And Darren, thank you very much for sharing your time with us tonight to discuss the leadership, to discuss values, ethics, to discuss character-driven leadership. This series and talks are part of my efforts to share the values and goals of the McCain Institute in Montenegro, which is my obligation to McCain Institute, whose network I'm a part of. And recently I started organizing trainings according to the McCain Institute and Arizona State University curriculum. I shared some of my thoughts with you. And Darren, thank you again for joining us tonight.
You're very welcome, Lubo. It's a pleasure.
So I just wanted to start to break ice with some of the thoughts that you might have about leadership, and maybe start telling me about your experience living in Montenegro. What are some of the values, national values? What are some values that you experience here in Montenegro to be similar to those that you cherish as an American? And where do you see our resources? And you can maybe tell us a little bit more about your efforts and initiatives to improve quality of life here in Montenegro.
Thank you, Lubo. It's a pleasure to join you this evening. I dropped off, but I think we're all used to that in the coronavirus age of dropping off of Zoom meetings. And I think you gave some background. I did serve in the military as a career officer. I started out in the infantry and then moved into the special operations community. And from there into the embassy and diplomatic community, serving in Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and finally here in Montenegro, where I decided to resign from the military and move into the private sector. I've established a U.S. management consulting company, and I manage it and operate it from here in Montenegro. The reason for Montenegro is it's a platform for business. From this location, you can reach Northern Europe, Eurasia, Middle East, and Africa in one or at most two plane rides. And for doing business in the consulting world, it's a very good location. Moving on to the values, I think the two values that strike me about the Montenegrin culture is probably the main two reasons we decided to raise our daughters here in Montenegro. And that's the respect for family and respect for community is very strong here in Montenegro. You know, my daughters are able to, that respect for community creates a safe environment for family. And my daughters are able to do things here in Montenegro that they would be unable to do anywhere in the world. And the community, I always feel safe that the community is looking out for them. And that's really the number one reason we decided to, number one personal reason we decided to call Montenegro home. It's that safety and respect for community that is inculcated in the values of Montenegro. Another aspect of Montenegro is a very multi-ethnic country. We saw that through the 1990s. This was the only country that did not experience any kind of conflict. In fact, Montenegro was kind of an accepted neutral zone with some of the warring factions. And that multi-ethnic value is very important to me, having lived in very different situations than a typical American, whether that was in Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Kunar province of Afghanistan, or Tunisia. There's a lot of aspects of culture that is respected.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you that because you have really exceptional career path. You got to live in really interesting and beautiful parts of the world. Your family is you married in Central Asia. That's very, very interesting that you spent a really big part of your life in that part of the world. You've been to Middle East, you've been to Africa, you served in Bosnia for some time in the 90s. You've been to Moscow. How did this journey affected your leadership style? How did it affect your leadership philosophy? I just was interested in how those all experiences helped you formulate your leadership philosophy.
Wow, very interesting question. I think just off the cuff is that it taught me to respect people for what they brought what they bring to the team, and not their background, how they grew up, their religious affiliation, their sexual orientation, or any of that really extraneous characteristics of a person. When you're in difficult, high stress situations with people from a different culture, the only thing that matters is what they're bringing to the organization. If I think there's a very much understood dichotomy between the traditional American experience and Islam. And I spent much of my time in Muslim countries, fighting development work and working alongside and serving alongside people from different backgrounds. You just learn very quickly that as long as we share the same vision and the same goals and objectives, where you come from doesn't matter.
Here we come to a very important thing about having your personal values that are formed by different backgrounds are really affected by the organizational values. And here we got opportunity to talk about it a lot, you and me. And I don't want you to compare the American and national values of the countries that you live in. The countries that you lived and worked in. But I wanted to ask you, what are the similarities? What are your thoughts? How similar those values are? And is this only a difference in how they are presented and their the basic the basic message of those values remains the same? Its essence, the essence of the values that are different but remains the same. In America, you call it pursuit for happiness, liberty,
life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness.
Life, liberty, yes, and pursuit for happiness. Somewhere in the other place of the world, you call it differently, but the essence of those values remain the same. Is there, what do you think, a consensus? Are there some basic human values that are accepted all around the world? And is there a consensus that there are some values that are universal for all the...
I found through my travels and service that the basic core values are the same. Life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness is ingrained in our Declaration of Independence as core values of the United States. But that phrase and the principles of that phrase evolved from Europe, which evolved from the Middle East, which these same values are there throughout the world. It's just the manifestation of them are different. A very simple analogy is a father in Kisumu, Kenya, wants the best for his children, just like a father in the state of Kentucky wants the best for his children. A mother in Moscow wants the same for her children as a mother in Montana. There's very little differences. In fact, every chance I had to mentor and teach young military and business leaders as well is when you enter a culture you don't know or you're unfamiliar with and you're just entering it, do not look for the differences. The differences will always be there, but you should focus on the similarities because that's the bridge that is going to help you understand better that culture is if you focus on the similarities. And really, people want to live in a stable, secure environment. As a general statement, there are some networks out there that want to disrupt that. But as a general statement, people want to live in a secure environment. They want the liberty to make their own decisions, minimum interference from government regulators, and they want to pursue happiness. It's just the manifestation of it that really changes.
The manifestation is different. That's correct. A perfect word. just as we are formed as personalities, different personalities, by the environment we live in, I wanted to ask you how much your place that you were raised affected you, your background, family, schooling, how much military, that's really a specific culture in the US, affected your thoughts on leadership, how they affected your leadership philosophy, and if you can name few values that you've learned in different spheres of your life, especially in the military, affected you. After you answer me to those questions, I would like to share with you and the people who are viewing this tonight a short video of a speech of Colin Powell, a leader, respected leader in the US, where he speaks about his beginnings as an infantry lieutenant like yourself. And what do you think? Should we watch it before or after you answer this question?
I would definitely defer to Colin Powell.
To see the Colin Powell first, right?
Yes.
Okay, let's take a look at this video. We are not. Okay, I'm gonna find it right now. Something's wrong again with our internet. Here it goes. Just a second. Okay, here it goes. Yeah. So I'm gonna share the screen now. I cannot find the video right now. Okay. Something's happening with the computer. Unfortunately, I cannot find the. Just a second. I'll try again. Yeah, technicalities. No. Something's wrong with the. Yeah. Unfortunately, something's wrong with the.
No worries.
With the PowerPoint presentation. No, it doesn't show. Yeah, the Zoom application. So we were gonna continue speaking. Basically, I can maybe discuss what Secretary Powell or General Powell told in this video. So basically, he mentioned that what he learned at the infantry school, when the sergeant at the infantry school told him that he'll know what leadership is once. So what he wanted to tell by this is that the essence of leadership is trust. And when you earn this trust among your fellow soldiers or people in your organization, the easier it is for you to focus on goals and to deliver the results. So is it something that you acquainted at the infantry school? Is it something that you is this experience similar to yours?
It is absolutely. You know, General Powell, Secretary Powell. I read his book many years ago. I think it's My American Journey, and it's a very influential book, looking at him and the obstacles that he had to overcome in the institutional biases for him to achieve what he did in the military and in our government. I think he's one of the top political military leaders of our generation in the U.S. And he represents so much more than simple position. He represents he represents a model for others to emulate, regardless of where you come from. But I think I've seen the clip that you're talking about, and trust is paramount to leading an effective organization. And you gain that trust through enabling and resourcing your subordinates, whether in the military or in a private organization. You know, you recruit, you hire, and you staff people as part of your organization. But to make that an organization and a team are two separate things. You can put people together and call it an organization, but it's not a team until a leader influences it and then begins to manage the people within that organization toward a common objective or a common vision. And people are people everywhere. If you don't instill that trust that I've hired you for this specific skill, and I trust that you can fulfill that skill, if you don't establish that rapport with your employee, then you've got a problem. You've got a misaligned organization there. You're never going to be able to form a team. Now, your role in that organization is not to do your employees' jobs, but to allow them to do their jobs and to synchronize their efforts toward that objective. Because nobody else in the organization will do that. If you're not doing it, who else's responsibility is it to do that? And then that's your primary role. And just once your employees or your soldiers, your sailors, your airmen see that you as the leader are focused on the horizon and shaping the operational environment around the organization for them to succeed, they will allow you to succeed as well. And that bond of trust will be there because you are resourcing them. You are allowing them to make mistakes. You are providing training and development, because in any organization you have strengths and you have weaknesses, and one of your many roles is to leverage the strengths to overcome the weaknesses and develop those weaknesses into future strengths for your organization.
Thank you. There's another very important thing that we learned in the McCain Institute during my year spent there, and the curriculum of the Institute's leadership course really insists on culture. So there is this quote. I was trying to find the perfect idiom in Montenegrin and other languages we speak here in the Western Balkans to translate the Peter Drucker's quote, where he says that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And there's no similar idiom. We of course we can translate it. We do understand it here, but there's this comparison between personal values and how important is syncing the personal values and the organizational value for a person that works in a certain organization. So there's another video. Unfortunately, we can't watch it right now, but I will try to explain what is it about. So basically, it says that when you are living in and working in an environment that is not aligned with your personal values, you cannot give maximum performance. So basically, what this video says, that every day when you come to work, you need to park your personal values in front of the building together with your car, and to bring on the facade of, and focusing just not to overstep the lines and not to just act as someone else. And you're focusing on that. It's really a 24-hour job, and you can't really give yourself to the organization. Once your personal values and organizational values are aligned, and national values are aligned, then you come to a space, to a sweet spot when you can give yourself completely to the organization, your creativity, your competencies, everything. You can give the gift, as this video says, you can give your gift to the organization. Have you ever encountered in your leadership journey a place when your personal values were not aligned with the values of the organization or the unit within an organization that you worked for, and what was your strategy to cope with this situation?
Wow. The misalignment of my values with the organizational values. So when you enter the military, your values is part and parcel of every training event that takes place in the military. You know, you're tasked with either following or leading men and women in difficult, stressful environments that could lead to the death of people. So there's human rights aspects to everything you do, and because you're bringing people from every corner of the United States, the continental United States, Alaska, Hawaii, Guam, Puerto Rico, immigrants, green card holders from throughout the world, you're bringing all these people into one organization. You have to have a values baseline, and it's about that alignment on what integrity means, what trust means, what selfless service means. There's situations where it doesn't always work, but your goal as the organizational leadership is to have those systems and processes in place so you have a common touchstone in the values that your organization believes in, your leadership believes in, and in order to make it an effective organization and a team. Mm-hmm. Now, running into that in the military, there were probably Afghanistan. There was some misalignment situations on values between what I was seeing on the ground and what was being reported into our national leaders. The Afghanistan papers recently were published, and I saw very little intentional misalignment, but there was unconscious misalignment that some senior leaders never wanted to self-reflect on. And that was very difficult as basically an upper mid-level leader in combat with our counterparts to watch on a daily basis. And I guess the best way to sum that situation up is that going back to earlier statements, values are pretty much all the same. It's the manifestation of those values that differ. And I think for too long, we were focused on making the manifestations look just like we looked. And that's just not going to work in some parts of the world. You have to accept people and capabilities for who they are and not what you want them to be. Now, that's as a uniformed service member. I can give you another vignette in the private sector where definitely values were misaligned. The organizational values were the integrity is very important to me, and integrity is the fundamental, is the basis for any organization, because it's where you get honesty with yourself, with your employees, with your clients, with your beneficiaries. That's the basis of integrity. But the organization was not being honest with its employees and not with the clients. And eventually I left the organization. And it was just a very short time with the organization. So it was just an experience where, this just really isn't for me. I have to open another chapter in my life. And you know, I can give you one other vignette with in an opposite view that in a reverse role, I worked for a very, very good ambassador, but I had the impression that she didn't think that our values were aligned based on previous military officers that she had worked with. And it took me a long time to overcome that space, that perception space, and prove to her that, you know, our values are aligned, and there's not even a difference in the manifestation. But based on her past experiences, I could tell that she's had bad experiences with U.S. military officers, and she just wasn't comfortable and felt like there was a distance there. But it was my role as a representative of the Department of Defense to build that relationship, close the gap, and move forward toward the common objective of U.S. foreign policy in that country.
Yeah, I'm familiar with this kind of competitive environments between Department of State and Department and the Army and the Department of Defense. Our two mentors for the program were General Frickley and Senior Ambassador Michael Polt, and they were always joking about the differences between the organizational culture in the two environments. So I'm pretty familiar with the let's put it, a tension between the two departments within the U.S. government. This is what I wanted to ask you next, but you mentioned it right now. I know I really had the opportunity to work with you and to develop together with you some projects with the company that you own. And I've seen that one of the values that is clearly stated is integrity. So this is what I wanted to ask you, because this is not custom in Europe, and certainly not Montenegro, that organizations, not just the government organization and institutions, but the private organization in the US have this custom of stating their organizational values. So why do you think it is important to have clear? Is it important to make a clear message to your employees and to your partners? What are your values? To make them clear and to make sure that all the people you work with understand those organizational values. Why is it so important? Why is it important to make people aware of your values within the organization?
It's similar to the military, but just on a much smaller scale. You're working with people from around the world, and you need to have a common baseline of values and the definition of those values. I think the definition is the most important part. And the only way you get to a definition and understanding of the definition of a word, because you can say integrity all day long, but how is that defined and how does that play out in your organization requires leadership, it requires training, it requires open and honest discussions, and it requires you to accept that mistakes will be made. You know, to me, when I established a company, you know, you do this discussions with friends, with colleagues, what should be the core values. And when I first established the company, there wasn't, I didn't like, okay, my company's mission is this, and here are the core values. It evolves over time where you get some experience and you realize, okay, there needs to be 3 or 4 things that is the baseline for the culture in the organization. So integrity immediately came to mind, because in the consulting and advising realm, you know, you're not making sunscreen in a production line and selling sunscreen at different locations throughout the world. Your projects are problem based, and you're hired to help advise, assist a client think through a problem set. So and there's usually stakeholders involved. There's always stakeholders involved. And in some situations, there's your client, there's the beneficiary who is going to receive the services, and then there are the stakeholders out there. So there's like a triad. And at any point in that triangle that you get misalignment, then expectations change. And if you have a minor difference in expectations at point 0, by the time you get to point 10, that's a major misalignment in expectations, and you're going to have a problem. And I learned that as being the Department of Defense representative in a embassy where you do work with your sister agencies, and you have many bosses. There's this, I've heard it throughout my career, you can only have one boss. You need to know who your boss is. Well, when you move to the strategic level of leadership, whether it's in the military, government, or business, you have many bosses, and you have to learn to accept that you're going to take direction, or you better be able to take direction from many different avenues. And I walked into the environment in embassy where, okay, I'm Department of Defense. I report to a general officer, and that is my direct reporting line. But I also work for the ambassador, and I also work for the Office of Secretary of Defense. I also work for Joint Staff. So you have all of these bosses, and you have to figure out you have to maintain your honesty with all of them. And you can't tell one something that you're not telling the other, and you can't change the story from one boss to the next. There has to be that common message that is true, and whether it's good or bad information, whether your work is producing good results or your work's producing bad results, you have to be honest. And in the business environment and strategic leadership in the business, you still have many bosses, regardless of where you're at, because you're going to have board members, you're going to have investors, and you're going to have many different customers. Walmart, they're what's the biggest thing Walmart sells? Whatever it is, maybe candy. That candy vendor to Walmart's going to have a say in how Walmart operates, and you have to learn to accept that and add that into your team of people who are not directly reporting to you, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course. This is what really administration, as I've been working in the administration, learns you the most. If there's something that you take with you from the service, public service, is a knowledge and the art of juggling between all these levels of authority. Coming back to definitions, you mentioned definitions, how important are definitions of different subjects we were talking about tonight. I wanted to talk about the leadership. Here we're how the definition of leadership changed through time. So there are two definitions I just wanted to point out, and I want you to comment on it. Those are US definitions of leadership. In the beginning of the 20th century, leadership was perceived as a capability to impress one's will, leader's will, to those who are led, and the capability to impress the obedience, to expect the obedience, the loyalty from those who are led in order to achieve the goals. Today, what is a really widely accepted definition of leadership has a different kind of a sentiment. It says that it's the capability to share the positive vision of change, vision of positive change, and it is a capability to empower others, to inspire them to work together on a shared cause. So how do you see this difference? Do you see this as an evolution? Do you see leadership Do you see a value in this change from the obedience to, let's say, a consensuality? That when people is it important to make people feel that the cause of the organization is their own cause in order to have them perform better?
Oh yeah. So the first one was the beginning of the 20th century, and the second one was the end of the 20th century.
Yeah, this is the one that we are using today in our group.
So yeah, it evolves over time. I definitely like the second definition, and that is more aligned with how you have to lead, and especially in a multicultural environment. But the definition is important, because you have to have that common understanding of what a value or what leadership is, what your shared vision is. That's the first thing, is to ensure that the terminology you use and the understanding of that terminology is the same throughout your organization. So in empowering your people gives them the buy-in that you need for your vision to be realized. You know, I have felt strongly for years that the definition of leadership is not, I just said definitions are important. Definitions are important, but the measurement of leadership is also very important. And I measure leadership by how well the organization that the leader leads, how well that organization functions without that leader. Because that tells you immediately whether that leader has been doing his or her job correctly in resourcing and enabling his or her subordinate leaders and managers to do their job, to share in the vision, offer input, and to help make decisions in that organization. You know, a lot of organizations are they're not hierarchical. They're more orbital. It's in the center is one decision maker, which everybody goes to, and nobody's allowed to make a decision because they made decisions in the past and it didn't work out, and you know they don't want to be yelled at anymore. So instead of having a hierarchical pyramid that pushes decision making down, you end up with one person in the center that everybody just waits for his or her decision, and then that's how things go. So you're not going to, your ceiling, that organization's ceiling is much lower than an organization with a shared vision, with leadership that understands my success is dependent on their success and vice versa.
So we're almost running out of time. So I wanted just now to come back to Montenegro, and I wanted you to share one really particular initiative that wants to exploit our, let's say, national values and make them work for the growth and development of our country. I really appreciate many conversations I had with you about Montenegrin capacities of Montenegro, about our about how our people really have capacities for really, and our country has great possibilities for growth and development. So I wanted you to tell me a little bit about Montenegro 2025, the initiative, and how do you see it help Montenegro grow and develop into a successful nation?
Well, so Montenegro 2025 is a project that I've just started working on. It's in the concept phase now. I'm designing it. And it's tentatively called Montenegro 2025. And what it is a shared vision of Montenegro's future as not just a luxury destination, but a socially resilient, progressive, and global business platform. Now, what I mentioned it previously, what I think Montenegro offers to any business is a platform to reach Europe, Eurasia, Middle East, and Africa. So Montenegro 2025, at its concept phase right now, is to be able to market that to investors outside of the luxury real estate development arena. You know, the cornerstone of the Montenegro economy is luxury real estate developments and the services that go along with that, and tourism. It's tourism, real estate investment, and the service sector. But what we have right now is we have a small group that benefits tremendously from this investment, and then a much larger group that just provides services. And by and large, they're low-paying service jobs. So if you're just a typical, say, a taxi driver here in Montenegro, what do you see in the future for your children in Montenegro? If they can't get into the luxury real estate market or owning hospitality, tourism, then what are they going to do? Well, they're going to walk just like they are now. The brain drain in Montenegro is quite high. And I would like to see that stemmed for the sake of my future in Montenegro, the sake of my children's future in Montenegro, and the next generation of Montenegro. I mean, you went through the Next Generation Leader Program. Montenegro 2025 is about the next generation. And basically, the cornerstone of it is an educational exchange and eventual satellite campus of a recognized U.S. university here in Montenegro. I'm using a model similar to this U.S. state of North Carolina, where they invested heavily in their education and university systems back in the 50s and 60s. And what's grown out of that is the exchange of ideas, inertia, energy, and entrepreneurship to establish North Carolina as one of the premier business states in the United States. You have the banking industry, you have financial industry, you have pharmaceuticals, you have everything on a macro scale that you could have on a micro scale in Montenegro. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with the tourism industry or the real estate investment in Montenegro. But for the next generation to succeed, we need to establish now the nexus of an education, technology, and opportunity program. And I think the best way to do that, to take the first step, is through an education exchange with a business university in the United States.
I can't wait to see the draft document ready. I know that you're working tirelessly to finish the document, the concept, and I really share the passion, your passion for this wish. So I'm letting you off the hook now. It's been already almost an hour that we're speaking. I just want to continue maybe in our language to tell the people that we will have this conversation subtitled for people who do not speak English, and it will be posted on the McCain Institute's Training Outpost Montenegro Facebook page in a couple of days. Darene, hvala ti puno na vremenu koje si izdvojio večeras i nadam se da se vidimo brzo i da razgovaramo i na neke druge teme. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Doviđenja.
Doviđenja.